Hello, and welcome to the 5th episode of BrettCast, the sort of podcast where I take several of my individual segments and combine them into one longer form video that releases once, sometimes twice a month. Coming up in this episode, Gaming Talk is going to kick things off with my full thoughts and discussion on the game Dark Souls 2: Scholar of the First Sin. After that, it's movie and TV talk for a triple feature, where I'm going to talk about some things related to the upcoming Rise of the Beast movie. Then I'm going to rant about the second season of Supergirl. And finally, I'm going to give my thoughts on the recent reveal of the Hunger Games prequel movie. With that, let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to the Gaming Talk segment. In this segment, I'm going to be discussing and giving my thoughts on Dark Souls 2: Scholar of the First Sin. Let's get into it. Dark Souls 2 is what I think is the standard for what a game sequel should be. Why is that? Well, because Dark Souls 2 doesn't really add much to the formula from the first game. It just does everything the original does. It does them again. The combat is exactly the same, the sound effects are exactly the same, the lack of music is exactly the same, the difficulty of the boss is how it was in Dark Souls 1, so on and so forth. It just takes all of the mechanics from Dark Souls and does them again and doesn't add anything new. The obvious new thing is the map, locations, and layout of the world. In the first Dark Souls, the world was very interconnected, and that is how the player traversed it. In Dark Souls 2, you basically have a hub world. You'll go to areas that will usually involve 3 or 4 regular bosses, and then end in a big boss fight. Then you go back to the hub world and go on the next path. You'll also gain some NPCs that will join you in said hub world as well, so that's neat to see the area kind of fill out as you play. The other difference here is that you have to get a key to these specific areas that will have a big boss fight, and once you collect the souls from those, then you get to fight the final boss, and that's it. Well, now that I think about it, it's kind of similar to collecting the Lord Souls and then doing the final boss in Dark Souls 1. I don't hate this game, but it's really just more of the same, and thus makes it so that my one complaint from Dark Souls 1 also applies to this game. That being how I still feel like the lack of music makes the world feel very empty, and until that changes, that's going to be my opinion on it pretty much forever. But Dark Souls 2: Scholar of the First Sin is still a good and enjoyable game. With that brings the Gaming Talk segment to a close. Hello, and welcome to the Movie and TV Talk segment. In this segment, this is basically going to start with all my thoughts on Transformers: Rise of the Beast. Then I'm going to rant a bit about the second season of Supergirl. Then I'm going to wrap things up by discussing what I think on the upcoming Hunger Games prequel movie. So with that out of the way, let's get into it. So, as of this recording, it's been a little bit since the last trailer for Rise of the Beast. I'm still going to talk about it because it was an awesome trailer. What interests me the most about the most recent trailer is that we get to see Unicron in it, which is pretty awesome to see, honestly. I find it very interesting that they're showing that Scourge and the other Terrorcons, I'm assuming, are heralds of Unicron, because they show a shot in the trailer of Scourge, like, standing on Unicron. Gotta say, though, the part with Bumblebee jumping from the plane and shooting those spear-looking things looks pretty awesome, too. All the bots we've seen in the trailers look really good. The action looks good too, and I'm looking forward to this movie. There are some interesting things that I think is personally a bit dumb that people are complaining about. The first is about Wheeljack and how he looks. I saw a comment saying they did this because he's the smart character to, why he has the big glasses, stereotypical nerd look, and I think that's a dumb way to look at it. I don't hate Wheeljack's design in the movie. I really don't. I do agree with the comments, basically saying that Wheeljack should have at least had the same head as he did when we briefly saw Wheeljack in the Cybertron opening in the Bumblebee movie. Perhaps they will give an explanation in this movie as to why the change, but I kind of feel like they won't. And I feel like people will complain about that and knock it down a bit, but I don't think it matters all that much, people. I've also seen a few people talking negatively about Mirage in the movie because of his Porsche vehicle mode. People saying, this isn't my Mirage, which has got to be one of the stupidest comments I see about various aspects of this movie. Now, there are still some people with brains because of a comment I saw and agree with. They basically said that they prefer Mirage's vehicle mode in the movie over the G1, because in G1 it never made sense for Mirage to have a vehicle mode of what I think is a Formula 1 car. I don't know, which wouldn't be street legal anyway. Obviously the G1 cartoon didn't care about that, but I have to agree with the comment. Even in Dark of the Moon, they didn't let the wreckers with their NASCAR vehicle modes just drive around, since those kind of cars would not be street legal anyway. Another thing I've seen people complaining about is how the Maximals supposedly have too much mechanical detail in their beast modes, and I don't know why it matters. The movie never really does characters like one-to-one from cartoon to live action, even with the Bumblebee movie. The characters then have more of a G1 influence, but it's not exact, and that continues with the Maximals in this movie. Plus, again, this leads to some people using the really dumb comment, "This isn't my Beast Wars," which again is really fucking stupid comment that doesn't make much sense to say. Now, I don't usually do this, but since it's Transformers, I'm going to do a bit of predicting. Do I think this movie will do well? Well, I'm going to say yes, but not like 100% yes with absolute certainty. It's more of like yes with an 80% certainty. See, I feel like the Bumblebee movie had more of a struggle since it was coming off the back of the financial failure of The Last Knight. So, since Rise of the Beast is coming off the more successful back of Bumblebee, I feel like it has a better chance of also being successful. Of course, what could happen if it is? Could that mean a sequel to Rise of the Beast? I mean, it could. Tends to happen to movies that are successful, but probably not too quickly, since that animated Transformers movie is set to release next year, so I don't think we'd see any sort of sequel to Rise of the Beast anytime soon, assuming it is successful. Of course, everything is up in the air until the movie actually releases. I know that I, for one, am very much looking forward to heading to the theater in June to see this movie. With that, that's going to do it for this part, so time to move on. Alright, for some time now, me and my partner have been watching the Arrowverse shows in a particular order. So, as of this episode, we're watching Flash, Supergirl, Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow, and Black Lightning. Pretty much all at the same time. Anyway, I want to specifically talk about Supergirl, more specifically, the second season of it. Well, more like rant about it. So let's get into it. Now, if you think I'm going to rant about the overall story of the second season of this show, you're very wrong. What I want to rant about when it comes to the second season of Supergirl is Kara herself, because she is an absolutely insufferable person in the second season. Let me start with Kara and her so-called love life issues. Now look, I'm not one who is constantly looking to ship characters in shows. However, it was perfectly clear Kara wanted to be and should have been with Jimmy Olsen. It's so clear that she fawns over the man all the time in the first season. Then in season 2, Kara has the chance to be with James, and she takes it. She takes it for like a whole day, and then she basically friend zones Jimmy for no reason. None. And I really don't get it. When, as I said, in season 1, she wanted to be with him so bad that it was so obvious. Then, when she gets the chance, takes the chance, she goes a single day before deciding to just be friends. Kara wanted it so bad. Oh, but it gets worse. See, later, Kara decides to get with this guy named Mon-El, who's from the planet that was very close to Krypton, but they didn't see eye to eye with Krypton. Now, I personally don't agree with this particular relationship, because if she won't be with Jimmy, then my second pick was always Win, but whatever. Anyway, there are times that she basically whines about how she could have had everything that she wanted, but she had to give it all up and choose to be Supergirl. When she says that she could have had it all, having it all in reference to the fact that she could have been with Jimmy like she wanted to. And anyway, and she says all this like she's some kind of victim, and that there's absolutely no way she could have ever had a relationship with Jimmy, that it's just definitely not the fact that Kara herself decided to friend zone Jimmy. And yes, this really f***ing annoys me. The next thing I want to talk about with her in relation to Mon-El comes in the form of the end of the season. So what happens towards the end of season 2 is that the Queen of Daxam decides to invade Earth and try to make it into a new version of their planet. The only way to get them to leave is Lena Luthor and her mom make a device that disperses lead into the air that won't hurt humans because the Daxamites are weak to lead, and it works. The problem is that Kara is dating Mon-El of Daxam, a prince of Daxam, mind you, and this affects him, and so Kara has to send him off Earth so he doesn't die, which is extremely heroic of her. So then, towards the end of one of the very last episodes in season 2, Kara basically says that her relationship with Mon-El was the first one she had. And oh my god, it pisses me off hearing her say that. Did she forget about her attempt to date Jimmy Olsen? Seems like she wants to forget that it really happened. And I fucking hate it. I hate it. The next thing I want to talk about is when her sister, Alex, decides to come out as gay to Kara. Kara has the worst reaction ever to it. Like, what the hell kind of adopted sister is Kara to react to information in any way that isn't being happy for Alex? Like, seriously, she's terrible about it. Just absolutely terrible. Let me also mention how Kara treats Mon-El up until the point that she decides to get with him. Now, because of the not-so-great history between their planets, Kara basically treats him like crap most of the time. But then she decides to train him because, he's kind of got powers like Kara, but not quite as powerful. Anyway, this gets to the part where Kara constantly says things to Mon-El in relation to if he ever decides to become a hero like Kara. It's worse when Mon-El does something wrong or bad and Kara scolds him. And again, we'll bring up, whatever he did in relation to if he ever wants to become a hero like her. The problem I have with this is that every time it happens, Kara is being incredibly selfish as to assume that because Mon-El is even remotely like her and Clark, that he too would want to become a hero like her. Not once does Kara ever stop to consider what Mon-El wants, because it's all about what Kara wants for Mon-El. And there's something similar in the Valentine's themed episode. This is because it's revealed that Alex's girlfriend, Maggie, really hates the day due to something that happened in her past. Alex goes to Kara for advice, and the advice is to use what Maggie likes and create their own way to celebrate the holiday. Now, this doesn't really work for Alex. Later in the episode, Kara runs into Maggie to tell her basically that Alex has never really had the opportunity to celebrate Valentine's Day in a romantic way with someone she actually cares for. So Maggie needs to put whatever her issues are away for the sake of Alex and what Alex wants. I just do not agree with what Kara says to Maggie. Maggie does tell Alex exactly what caused her to hate Valentine's Day, so if you ask me, Kara pretty much telling Maggie to suck it up for Alex's sake kind of makes Kara come off as incredibly insensitive. Why? Tell me why, Kara. Why does it... I can't even words right now. Why does what caused Maggie to hate Valentine's Day just not matter? Why couldn't Alex and Maggie have just talked things over and come to a middle ground as to what to do when it comes to Valentine's Day for them? You know, instead of it being so one-sided. Lastly, don't even get me started on the number of times that when other people disagree with Kara, she becomes a whiny little child about it. Like one episode when Lena Luthor gets accused of being a villain and Kara is the only one who believes she's innocent. Now ultimately Kara is right and Lena was actually innocent until that point Kara's just kind of whiny and acts like a child around everyone who disagrees with her. It's honestly so goddamn annoying that I don't even care that Kara was right. Like, don't act like that just because people disagree with you. Kara in the second season of Supergirl is just so insufferable that I'm glad to be done with that season of the show. And I hope it gets better from there. But that's all I got here, so now let's move on to the next part. The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, is a movie that is a prequel to The Hunger Games. That's also based on the book of the same title. I'm just going to be giving my thoughts on this, even though I've only seen one trailer for the movie and have never read the book. But I'm going to talk about it anyway, so let's get into it. First thing I want to say is that I am interested in this movie, as it does look decent, based on the single trailer we have for it so far. I'm not, like, super hyped, but, like, you know, it's like a you have my attention kind of thing. I'm also not here to hate on this movie yet, given how little information there is about the movie. The reason I even wanted to talk about this at all, because I feel like this movie may struggle a little bit. Now, it's not like the Hunger Games movies and books don't have hardcore fans. I'm sure they are out there, like they are for most franchises. But my thinking is that this movie is coming out a little bit later than it probably should have. Now, it's not helped by the fact that the book the movie is based on was only released in 2020, which I also feel like is a little bit late as well. Like, I remember being in high school when I borrowed the first 3 Hunger Games books from a friend of mine because the movies were coming out. Here's the thing. The last Hunger Games movie released in 2015, a whole 8 years ago. So, I just wonder if this new prequel movie will be able to hold its own, since it won't have the hype of a previous movie that released, a year or 2 before. But I am interested in this movie, and I'm interested to see more trailers for it whenever they came out. Maybe I'll see if there's an audiobook version of the book out there so I can just compare it to the movie when it comes out and I see it. But that's all I have here, so that's going to bring the movie and TV talk segment to a close. And that's also going to be the end of the 5th episode of BrettCast. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them down below, and I may answer a question or respond to a comment in a future episode. If you like this kind of content, feel free to subscribe. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.